Hulkenberg and Alonso on lap 2, which was fantastic. You can see that on your screens now. That was pretty exciting to see, wasn't it?
He set off feisty today, didn't he, Alonso? Managed to make his way into the points, the first points for him of the season, and great to see him do that in front of his home fans. He was really going for it in the early laps, to the point where he cost himself a couple of positions trying to pull off that move around the outside of turn 3. But there's plenty of life in Fernando Alonso yet.
It was great to see how much energy he had. You could tell that he was really enjoying putting on a show in front of these fans. And he'd said before the race that these fans give him such energy. And I think he paid them back with that performance, didn't he? First points.
Yeah, really paid them back. If you could have chosen a venue to take first points, this would have definitely have been it. And it'll be heartening for Aston Martin. You know, they've lost Lance Stroll for this one, couldn't replace him because there was no other driver qualified in the car. So they've got one horse in the race, and the opportunity for that driver to take home points is important for their morale. It's important for Fernando in front of his home crowd, and it's important for their season.
Let's hear from the man himself in the media pen.
Fernando was looking really good early on, then you had that moment through the gravel, but you got back into the points at the end. You got them on the board. You must be pleased with that.
Yeah, I'm pleased for the fans as well, that they were very excited at the end. I saw the people, standing up and things like that in the last few laps. So yeah, happy for them. The race for us was more difficult than anticipated. We were very slow in the straights. All the moves we have to be aggressive in 10-3 on the outside, so not a normal overtaking place, but it's what we had today. So yeah, definitely I felt more comfortable on Saturday than on Sunday.
You look really fired up out there, determined to put on a display for those home fans. I mean, some great moves. That must have been pretty enjoyable from your side.
Yeah, it was a little bit a higher level of risk in this race, because overtaking is difficult, following is difficult, it's killing the tires. So yeah, we were aggressive, but as I said, I was expecting a little bit more from the race pace, but let's try to take the points that we scored today and build the momentum from now on.
Well done, Fernando.
Great day for Fernando Alonso, and just a reminder that Lance Stroll was not racing today under medical advice, so that is why they're only running the one car. But I'm sure the team will be very pleased to have been able to end up in the points with that.
Well, very good. The truth is that I am very, very happy to have had a good finish so far, always being in the top 10 and now in Q3. I think it is the third time in a row after Imola, Monaco and Barcelona. So after Miami, which was probably the lowest point, right? We were probably the 10th car in Miami. We have made steps forward and we are more competitive, and I am having more fun, I am sure. What is the plan for tomorrow? Well, I think it will be a difficult race in terms of tire management. We have fast cars behind us too, Albon, especially in P11, with more sets of tires that did not make it to Q3, so no, I do not expect an easy race, but we are going to give it our all. The fans have given us a boost at this time in all the sessions, and because it won't be the same tomorrow.
Thank you.
Sorry. Well, we haven't seen you celebrate it, practically as if it were pole position or a top 3 finish. I imagine you've given your Aston the maximum, right?
Yes, I've given it my all in all the sessions and now in the time trial too, and I've had some good laps, haven't I? We were perhaps a bit conservative in Q1 and Q2 because we used 2 sets of tires when it didn't seem necessary, because the first lap was enough, and that penalized us a bit in Q3 when we only had 1 attempt. But apart from that, even though we only had 1 attempt, the lap went well, there was no traffic, I didn't lose out on almost any corners, and that's the potential of the car. It's all very close. It's true that you could be 7th or 8th in a 10th, but we have to earn that 10th in the next races. You were saying that strategy will be important tomorrow. Last year we saw soft and medium. Will it be similar? Yes, the tires are the same as last year, so I don't think there will be much variation, but we'll have to be careful, right? Of any traffic ahead, of any excessive degradation that sometimes surprises you halfway through the race, and you can't spend 3 or 4 laps with that degradation because a lot of cars will pass you, right? So the start will also be important. We start in the middle of the grid and there will be a lot of action, and we have to try to avoid any mishaps. Fernando, good afternoon. Did you see how the fans went crazy with your lap? Was it the best position you could have hoped for today? Yes, I think so. No, I'm happy with P10. We knew that focusing on Q3 was going to be an important task, and we did it. And then, in Q3, I wish we could have gained a few positions, but we're there, less than a 10th, I think, 3 cars, and we've ended up being third out of those 3. But hey, right now we're not fast enough to deserve more, and we have to earn it in the next races. Just a curiosity, Fernando, what position would Alonso have finished in today if he had driven McLaren? You never know, but they're the big dominators, aren't they? They were very strong last year and they're still strong this year. These circuits where we also warm up the tires a lot seem to have even more advantages, and they're the benchmark team, and we have to, well, learn from them, right? And try to reach their level.
Meant that I could set up the rest of the race a bit easier. Getting through all the traffic was really tough, and the dirty air from 3 seconds, 4 seconds back starts to already make a big difference, and I felt like it was difficult to get through that at points, but I feel like when I needed to push and unleash the pace, then I could do a good job. And obviously the safety car at the end, I feel like I managed that pretty well, and then I knew I had the pace, so a good weekend.
I mean, still a good weekend. I lost out to the better guy this weekend. He performed yesterday, and that gave him the advantage today. So nothing more than that. I know where I need to improve. I know what I need to do better. I feel confident that I can do it. But you can't win them all. As much as I want to. It takes time to progress, and that's what I'm working on.
Yeah, I'm really happy. I mean, I did not expect to get that podium. I mean, we knew that we had a bit of an advantage with the tyre choices we had. The first part of the race was super positive for the sacrifices we did yesterday. The last part of the race was a little bit less positive, but wasn't too bad. And then the safety car helped us. Basically, Max had no tyres to go on the hard tyre, which put him in a bad situation, and we took advantage of it.
Look, that's how Max goes racing. As I said, he was in P4, I was in P5, I ended up P4, he ended up P10. So from my side, glad that I managed to finish the race. Not really sure what he was thinking, because he cost himself and his team a lot of points.
Yeah, Lewis, I think he wasn't used soft, and I had still all new because I was out so early yesterday, and it just shows you, what a difference it is, used to new. One lap, takes a lot of energy and life out of the tire. So that was obviously enjoyable, but I think we're not there really fighting with the big boys, but I think we made a big step, in terms of fighting with the other midfield teams.
Yeah, just didn't have any speed at the end.
And what do you take from this triple header as a whole? How much have you learned about the car?
It's the best race we could have done. I really enjoyed it as well, because there was some really good fighting, especially on lap 1 with Fernando and Pierre. Honestly, I had a lot of fun. Overtook a few cars as well. No, that was good. Pace on the medium, I think, was our strength, and we made the most of it. We extended on the soft. Honestly, we played it really well today. It's just a shame at the end that Nico on new tires got us, but he was way too fast for us.
Yeah, it was quite tough out there. I think generally on Sunday we struggle a bit more, so we got to work on tire deg and race pace. But I'm pleased in quali, managed to do a very strong qualifying, and I think it was the key to really stay in that top 10.
Yeah, I'm pleased for the fans as well, that they were very excited at the end. I saw the people standing up and things like that in the last few laps, so happy for them. The race for us was more difficult than anticipated. We were very slow in the straights. All the moves we have to be aggressive in 10-3 on the outside, so not a normal overtaking place, but it's what we had today. So definitely I felt more comfortable on Saturday than on Sunday.
We've seen it come out of Q2, we saw it go to the media pen, everything was fine, and then there was a note from the FIA saying he'd missed his driver weighing procedure after qualifying, which is what drivers have to do. Mandatory, you come after qualifying, if you get knocked out, to the garage, then you have to go straight to the FIA weigh bridge to get weighed, just to make sure that the car's in compliance. Don't stop. Lance had missed that. We didn't think much of it until Saturday night. We get a note from Aston Martin saying Stroll has withdrawn from the Spanish Grand Prix because of a wrist injury, which seemed quite strange. So this was a story, a lot of unanswered questions at that point. Develops overnight, and then we get back in the next morning. Then obviously the paddock rumour mill is in overdrive. There'd been talk that Stroll had thrown a tantrum in there, been very kind of upset after Q2. There'd been an incident in the garage. He'd stormed out the back of the pits. That's why I'd missed the weighbridge. And it kind of then developed from there. Then there was a steward's hearing into why he'd missed the weighbridge, and then a few more details came out. He had gone out the back of the garage, he'd done the media pen, he'd gone to the medical centre. The medical centre had looked at his wrist, that he'd been complaining of pain, and advised him to, don't race on, go and get it sorted. And then he left the track from there. But there was still this little bit of this mystery about, what happened in the garage and were these events connected or not.
Yeah, it's a strange one, isn't it? Because normally you'd expect if somebody suddenly got hurt that they'd go straight to the medical centre and there'd be sort of constant communication about their situation. Although I suppose it's not the typical Formula One incident in terms of somebody having an obvious incident on track and then you're kind of checking to see if they're okay, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think what makes kind of has added to the mystery element is that there'd been no mention of this outside of the team at all. We'd had no indication. Lance had this bike accident ahead of the 23 season. I think it was 12 days from this bike crash where he broke his wrists, had an operation, came back, brilliant performance in Bahrain, and then the issue had pretty much gone away. We'd had no reference, there had been no mention at all in the media. He did the media pen on Saturday, no mention at all of a problem there. So I think this is probably why there's this slight disconnect, because you hear drivers all the time complaining about, Fernando Alonso, for example, talked about his back pain he suffered in the car in the past and why he was racing on for the mechanics. He's talked about these things in the media pen, and we've seen him in the media pen, holding his back after races and saying, I need a break. If these cars are tough, this season's tough. So I think this is partly where the issue has come from, is that there's this disconnect between what we've been told and the indications and what potentially has been going on behind the scenes and behind those closed garage doors.
Yeah, it's quite common for drivers to kind of carry minor ailments with them, isn't it? Like you say, Alonso's back. I mean, other drivers have complained of back pain, particularly in this generation of cars. We'll come back to the injury itself later, but let's focus a bit on what happened exactly in the garage, because there is this version of events that obviously Aston describes as the paddock gossip we mentioned earlier. It's gained a lot of attraction though, saying Stroll basically lost his temper after getting dumped out in Q2. He had quite a good run in Q1, he was 7th fastest ahead of Alonso, but then dumped out in 14th, didn't go quicker in Q2 than he did in Q1 either. Apparently he criticised team members, potentially injured his hand or aggravated the pre-existing problem by whacking something in the garage. You obviously spoke to the team, you were there in Barcelona. Is there any truth to that rumour?
I think that, there's an extreme story version that went around that Stroll came out of the car, was hugely upset, threw his toys out the pram, abused the team members, smashed some things up, hurt his wrist and stormed off and flew out to Geneva. I don't think the reality is as extreme as that. I think it is true to say he wasn't happy after getting knocked out in Q2. I think, as any driver who is upset, will vent some frustrations with team members. I spoke to a Aston Martin spokesperson on Sunday who said, Lance was upset. They don't deny he was upset about getting knocked out in Q2 and the frustrations, because I think he felt there was more in this car. But they do emphasise that this being upset incident wasn't linked to the wrist injury. These things are completely separate. There was no punching of items in the garage, no punching of a wall that aggravated the wrist injury. I think the wrist injury and the events are separate, but they have happened at the same time. I think it's the classic paddock whispers where stuff shuffles down the pit lane from garage to garage and mechanic to mechanic. These things can get embellished. But I think it is true to say he was upset, he was frustrated. There were some words had, but I don't think you can say that this upset, him being upset, was the trigger for him storming off and leaving the circuit.
Time is running out to get 75% off a membership with us with our latest special offer on Patreon. It's a great time to check out the Race Members Club, including bonus podcasts and videos, exclusive behind-the-scenes insights, the chance to ask questions for our shows, community groups where you can chat with us and like-minded fans, and you get all of our regular podcasts and YouTube videos ad-free. This special promotion ends on June the 4th, so hurry if you want to become the ultimate insider. Just head to Patreon via the link we've posted below and enter the code RACE75 at checkout to claim this limited time offer. What do we know about the injury then? Because we know he originally injured his hand and wrist in a cycling crash back in 2023. You mentioned, he missed pre-season testing and then he kind of rushed himself back for the first race because Aston had a really competitive car for the start of that season, and there were lots of videos online of Lance doing his kind of physio to recover. And yeah, he carried the effects of that for the first few races, but it wasn't an ongoing story throughout the season. And there's been kind of no mention of it at all by him or anyone really until now. So we get the team kind of saying, well, actually, he's been having pain for the last 6 or so weeks. So basically the run of races from Jeddah through to Spain. So presumably something happened in Barcelona to aggravate it. The team say it wasn't an incident of him, punching something, which we know drivers do. I mean, there's a famous story of Lewis Hamilton smashing a team door, isn't there, after colliding with Nico Rosberg at the same race in 2016. But also it wasn't clear that the normal action of driving had hurt him in some way. You'd expect on a bumpy track with lots of curves, maybe Imola or Monaco, that might happen. But Barcelona is kind of, okay, it's a physical circuit from G-forces, but not from kind of the bumps and jarring that you'd get wrist injuries from. So you've spoken to him several times through this run of races as well. Have you noticed any problem that he's been carrying? What do you make of this kind of timeline we've been given?
No, he's not mentioned it at all, but I think Stroll's also somebody who very much keeps his kind of personal life and what's going on behind the scenes very secret. When I go to media sessions, and I've seen this throughout all his time in Formula One, ask him anything about detailed question about racing or cars or the weekend, he's absolutely fine. But any hint of a question about his personal life, so if a journalist comes in and asks him where he's staying or what he's been up to or anything, he completely shuts down, and it will kill the entire media session, because he just, his barriers come down and he stops talking about it. So he has been someone who keeps these things very personal to himself. So it's not necessarily unusual that he does it. Maybe he's a driver who thinks, if I start talking about the wrist injury, people are going to probe it more. It'll be used as a excuse to kind of beat me down, or as to why the performances aren't there. So he hasn't mentioned anything. I'm no medical expert, but perhaps it's a cumulative thing from this run of races. It's been, I think, one of the most intense starts to a season we've had. And while there hasn't been one, a big crash that's exacerbated it, if something starts niggling away at one of those early season races, you've had the triple header of Japan, Saudi, Bahrain, break, Miami, and then we've just had another triple header. Remember, these cars now are producing more downforce than they've done for a while. The cornering forces are greater. Super sticky tyres. So you're being pushed potentially harder than ever. Barcelona last time was quite hot, so very grippy conditions as well. Very, very tough. So I think maybe it's just a cumulative thing, and if the pain's getting worse and worse and worse, there's no respite, basically. But it is just slightly strange as to why the medical advice would be on Saturday not to do it, and this hadn't come up on Thursday or Friday or even following the previous race in Monaco.
Yeah, maybe it was one of those situations where they were just hoping to get away with it until a bigger gap, and then go and have the procedure quietly without interrupting the racing schedule. But obviously it got to a point where he needed to suddenly stop. He missed the race, and he has, as we understand while recording this video, now had the procedure. So the injury is certainly genuine, and it seems he's gone back to the same medical team that operated on him originally in 2023, either to kind of correct things that weren't able to be done well enough at the time, or the new damage he's done over this run of races. You've spoken to the team, I believe. Do you know anything about the recovery plan from here? Because obviously the turnaround from Spain to Canada is quite tight. It's another kind of 2 weeks or less period, which is exactly the same time frame he went through back in 2023.
Yeah, there's no firm details we've got of this procedure. We don't know what the procedure was. We know it was done by the same team that operated on him in 23. So it's Javier Mir, who's a doctor he's got a clinic in Barcelona, very famous for hand and wrist injuries, deals with a lot of MotoGP people, so understands motorsport injuries, understands wrists and hands, and has been very, very well trusted by those. This is why Stroll stayed in Barcelona after leaving the track on Saturday. The procedure's been done, and it's given. He gets a good run now, and I think the fact in 23, if he came back 12 days after actually the accident and the injuries being much more serious, then the likelihood is it's still possible he could be back for Canada. I think we need to wait for the more details of what the procedure was. Was it just a tidying up? Was it any did any bones need sorting out? Is it just the muscles? Is it just a muscle thing? Is it some realignment? I think until we get those details, I don't think we can say for definite, whether he's easily coming back or he is a proper doubt.
And that's obviously what puts his participation in his home race, Canada, into question. Obviously, Aston Martin have said their plan A is for, and they've said this all along, even before the procedure happened, that their plan A is for Stroll to race in Canada. So presumably they were expecting whatever procedure to not be too onerous. But at the same time, obviously, they do need a plan B if it was more serious than they expected or there were complications, etc. So what are Aston Martin's options if Stroll can't race in Canada?
Yeah, well, they've got two reserve drivers, Felipe Drugovich and Stoffel van Dorn. The complication of Canada is it's Le Mans, and both are racing scheduled to race in Le Mans that weekend. Van Dorn in at Peugeot and Drugovich in at Cadillac.
That's unfortunate.
Yes, bad timing.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of the uncertainty about Stroll's wrist, even if the doctors say yes, it's totally fine, I think they will need a fallback option. From what we understand, Drugovich is potentially top of the list as the reserve, and
he's put enough hours in, hasn't he?
Yes.
I mean,
finally waiting.
Yeah.
So I think they may well feel it better to have him as a fallback option just in case Lance has any problems in Friday, because you can replace the driver all the way up to after FP3 on Saturday morning. Second the driver has not qualified or driven any laps before qualifying, they can't do it. So
this is why they couldn't replace Stroll in Spain, right? Yeah. Because he started qualifying.
So it gives them some leeway timing wise. But for that to happen, I think they will need. It's a Le Mans test day this Sunday, so this is where Drugovich currently scheduled to do Le Mans. So I think things will nudge on that front. But the other option that Aston Martin could have is they could call upon Mercedes reserve Valtteri Bottas, for example. Bottas travels to the races, has this kind of roving role, so can be called upon by McLaren or even Williams potentially, or Aston Martin. So he could be another option if Drugovich decides that he's going to push on with Le Mans and it's all looking okay for Stroll. So there are options. I don't think we'll get to a scenario where Lance drives on Friday morning, says my wrist is hurting, can't carry on, and then they're left with nobody.
Aston Martin didn't come to Spain expecting a breakthrough, but the weekend coerced one anyway. Fernando Alonso finished in the points after weeks of underperformance. Lance Stroll, meanwhile, never made it to the starting grid. The Spanish Grand Prix wasn't goodly in the usual sense. There were no wild strategy plays or game-changing crashes. Instead, it revealed exactly where Aston Martin stands. One driver kept the team afloat, and the other raised fresh doubts about whether he should be racing at all. Lance Stroll pulled out of the race after qualifying. The team said it was due to recurring wrist pain, something that relates to his 2023 cycling accident. He'd already had metal plates inserted back then. Now those same areas were giving him trouble again. According to Aston Martin's version, Stroll reported pain. The medical team checked him out, and they pulled him for safety reasons. However, there was quite a lot of noise around it. Reportedly, there was a garage incident, some damage to team equipment, and words thrown in frustration. Team principal Mike Crack denied any connection between that and the withdrawal. He stood by the medical call. Still, the optics weren't great. A driver missing race day due to pain is one thing, but a driver walking out after a Q2 exit adds a layer the team never needed. Fernando Alonso kept Aston Martin in the constructors' fight. Starting from 10th, he moved up one place after Verstappen's time penalty. That 9th place finish gave the team 2 valuable points, small on paper, but crucial for a team barely holding onto midfield ground. Alonso called the result a weight off our shoulders. His frustration with the season so far has been visible, but this time he left the track feeling like something clicked. He also didn't sugarcoat it. He said the team had to start treating top 10 finishes as non-negotiable. He praised the upgrades but made it clear the gap to McLaren and even Stake isn't closing fast enough.